All right, we're on earnings and IPO watch here on the desk. Myles, let's kick this off with Bed Bath & Beyond. Initially, the stock fell in the pre-market on the company's earnings miss, but we are seeing a reversal here, and I really think it boils down to this. Two things. The company's second quarter gross profit margin guidance signals continued improvement quarter over quarter for a turnaround story that is always important to see, and Bed Bath & Beyond, in many respects, remains a turnaround story. Number two, they're talking about the same store sales in some of their key categories like bedding, bath, food prep, and home organization. Those sales were up 7% versus the first quarter of 2019 or pre-pandemic. Very important comparison. And I think the street likes to see what could be a Bed Bath regaining some of the lost market share. It did lose when it was being run terribly about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and then, I think it's just an odd position for the company to be in because, as you mentioned, they have the turnaround story, which I think the market still believes in, the market still likes. If we kind of look at the stock over a longer time period here, and even if you back out the pandemic, this was really trading kind of around $10 per share or so when we had new leadership take over. Now it's right around 30, but it's part of the meme trade, right? I mean, you still have, when you look at the stock chart here, you got a couple of crazy events. Last time we talked to Mark Tritton, he was stock was trading at 50, something like that, on one of those crazy meme days. And Sozzi put the question to him on what does he think about that? And I think it can't be discounted as part of how analysts are trying to make sense of what the right price is for this name. Now, as we know, no one really wants to touch that side of the story, but it certainly is part of the story here. And as you mentioned, just with the mix in store, company talking a little bit about the return to college trade. I think that stuff can't be totally, written off. And I think another reminder that there are a lot of normalization trends still to come through the second half of the year. It feels like, because we've all, done our vacations, we've talked ad nauseum, we'll talk later today about what's happening in the airline industry. There is still a whole back to school and even holiday season trade that can be on here for the retailers as we get into Q3, Q4.
Yeah, and Mark Tritton will be on with us tomorrow morning. So looking forward to catching up with him. Myles, also watching Constellation Brands, and we were talking about the hard seltzer market yesterday, and hard seltzer looks to have been a good performer for Constellation Brands in its most recent quarter. But I'm really focused on this, and perhaps I think investors are focusing in on this too. Stock is up about 2% in the pre-market despite the company missing. Constellation said it repurchased $523 million in stock in the most recent quarter. They signaled they are going to repurchase another $500 million in the current quarter, and they remain on track to repurchase $2.5 billion through 2023. Now, the stock is only up about 5.5% year to date. Obviously, that's lagging the S&P 500. So it looks like Constellation is trying to send a message to the market, said, hey, guys, wake up. Our stock is potentially undervalued as bars and as restaurants reopen. And all those bars, all those restaurants, they need our alcohol.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot for the company because you had a lot of at-home consumption. Obviously, you lost all the on-prem consumption, which is in bars and restaurants. Stock has had a decent run here, but it also speaks to where corporations are at, their confidence within the cycle. We saw stock buybacks really go away in the midst of the pandemic. And so, for them to come in on this, I think is also a sign of confidence they have just in the overall cycle, right? They generated I think $700 million in operating cash flow last year, but you just outlined the kind of repurchase that they are embarking on, which is essentially all of that. So an aggressive move here from the company.
Yeah, another big guest day tomorrow, Myles. I think Bill Newlands, Constellation Brands CEO, will be on with us as well. Really, I think we have 15 guests on the show. All right, as I mentioned, we are
good for you. Good for you looking at the rundown because I take it one segment at a time. I don't even know what's happening after this.
You know what? Your strategy may be the right one, Myles.